Peace, love, and light, everyone. I hope all is well. This is your girl, Serena, and welcome to Poetry, Publishing, and Literary Artistry. For those who don't know who I am or you're new to this, I am a self published author, a poet. I'm also a publishing coach as well, and I teach classes on self publishing, different forms of poetry, and I'm also a health and wellness writer. So today's segment, you're looking at the screen like, what is this and why? Okay, so today's segment, as promised, um, I actually teach different forms of poetry. So I bring what I can here. And this is a triptych. I mentioned this before. For those who haven't seen past seasons, go check out the past seasons or past segments, and you'll see when I talk about the triptych. I was giving y'all a little bit of a forewarning when I did the cleave, which is two columns. And I talked about, oh, if you think this is something, wait till you see a triptych. Well, today is the day. All right, so what is a triptych? A triptych, this is a form of poetry. So, worldwide, there are over 50 forms and counting of poetry forms. Yes, this is a form of poetry. So, rhyming is a form, free verse is a form, narrative is a form, metaphoric, haikus, etc., etc. So, we have the triptych. The master one, which you will see on the right side, is a unique combination of three poems, which are below in the columns. But when you read them from left to right, they form the master triptych. Okay, first off, I don't want you to be intimidated or scared. I actually learned about this form of poetry. I'm laughing a little bit because when we saw this in the class that I took during the pandemic called Writing to Wellness, by a beautiful, beautiful poet and spoken word artist, C. Thomas. You could check them out on Instagram under Margaret's Fifth. So Margaret, Margarets, the number five, and a TH. Margaret's Fifth. And they teach the Writing to Wellness class. And a few of us went off screen. We were like, no, we're not doing this. And then on top of that, we had to write, it was a metaphoric poem as well. So you can combine more than one form of poetry together. So the metaphor was a hot boiling pot of water or stew. So we're learning a triptych, and we also have to put it in the form of a metaphor. Okay. So how do you start, or how do you even address or attack a triptych poem? So the first time I learned this, not to say I did it wrong, but I made it more complicated. Okay. So um, I was like, I'll just write three poems and then I'll take the lines from the first line of each one and I'll make them blend. I'll make them go together. Did not work out well. Okay. It really took a long time for me to do that. Some poets can do that. Some, like myself, it didn't come out right. So I said, okay, that didn't go too right. So a good friend of mine who was in the same class, Chris K. Hey, Chris K. Um, I love how they approached this poetry form, very logical. And they were like, okay, we started with one line, triptych one. Then we did the first line for triptych two, and we did the first line for triptych three. And then we went back to the first line for triptych one, well, the second line. All right. Then, all right, we did the second line for triptych two and triptych three, but now we also were starting to read it vertically. With every line that Chris K wrote, let's read it vertically. All right, so it sounds good going up and down, but it sounds good going across. And if it doesn't, then you tweak it. I was like, oh, okay. So I did that for this poem. Actually, this was the poem I did in Writing to Wellness. I had to really do an overhaul. I did it for another poem. And I was like, okay, we're going to do it this way. And it came out, I was like, oh, this is like magic. Okay. So let's start. Okay. So let's act like you're writing and say, okay, I'm going to have three columns. I decided to write three columns. I had my journal out. I love to write all my poems with a pencil or a pen in a journal. Some people like to type it right into their phone or tablet or what have you, but I said, no, I love to write. It's something about pen to paper. So I said, all right, got my 2 pages and I have one column, two, and three. I somehow did three columns across the 2 pages. And I started with, I'm like a cool pot of water. That sounds great. Okay, with no heat underneath me in a metal like shell. All right, so I'm like a cool pot of water is the yellow highlighted line. The yellow is going to represent triptych 1. The blue is going to represent triptych 2 with no heat underneath me. And then the pink highlight is triptych 3 and a metal like shell. All right, first line. Okay, second line. We go back to triptych 1. Afraid to show my flavor like good seasoning. Go to triptych 2, line 2. Writing for years without sharing. Then I go over to triptych 3, line 2. Not knowing who would say what. So this poem is about when I started to share my poetry. And at first I wrote all my poetry and my poems for me. And for my really, then I eventually share with my close circle. So this is the beginnings of how the writer in me was born in my adult years. I wrote since I was a child, but just had lots of writing and didn't know what I wanted to do with it. But now my writing needs to be birthed because it could help other people. It could help me. So I decided to write about that. And then we go back to triptych 1 and so on and so forth. So the goal is, okay, after the first 2 or 3 lines, I said, how is it sounding vertically? So I went to triptych 1. Let's read this by itself. I'm like a cool pot of water, afraid to show my flavor like good seasoning. Would my poetic verses be accepted or not? Simmering started happening, adding more flavor. Okay. All right. I like how that's going. Then I went to triptych 2. With no heat underneath me, writing for years without sharing. I started circulating some pieces within my circle, finally feeling fire underneath my creative feet, everything coming together like a pot of fresh garlic, pepper, and oregano. Should put a disclaimer in this segment. If you were hungry before watching this segment, I'm sorry that you're going to become more hungry. Okay. And then triptych 3, in a metal like shell, not knowing who would say what, only choosing those who were close to me like stew in a small crock pot. Diving in more, poetic verses were now overflowing. All right. So they were sounding good up and down vertically, and it's sounding good going from left to right. The goal is to keep writing left to right, but also checking in with the poems individually, vertically up and down. This took some time for it to click in my head. Okay. And even then, after you finish, you may go back and say, okay, I need to change this a little bit or tweak this a little bit. And then it starts to come together. So, a triptych recap is three unique poems coming together and combining into one master poem, the master triptych. But when you read them from left to right, line by line, it forms the master one and it all sounds good. When you're reading it as the master poem, that's what it is. And it is reading as one big poem. Some people who don't even know that this was a master triptych didn't know that this poem came. from three separate poems and just see what works for you. Maybe you like to do a table format like this in your Word document or whatever document you use and say, I'm going to just do three. Do a table and have three columns and just write it out. So this is actually what you see is within my book, Artist Paradise, Piece of Life, Volume 3. So when you read my book, A Writer is Born, you're going to see the three columns at first, and then the master triptych is underneath it. Because I wanted to show people how did I get from a triptych to a master triptych. So I got all three poems and the master poem. So before I head off, I'm going to read to y'all the master poem. I will have to probably come back and do another segment. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to come back and do another segment of walking you through the triptych. We may even just come back to this one and just do the bottom part that I wasn't able to show today. I did not want to overwhelm y'all, okay, and show you the whole poem, okay, the three columns. But I'm going to read to y'all the master poem, and this is called A Writer is Born. I'm like a cool pot of water with no heat underneath me in a metal-like shell, afraid to show my flavor like good seasoning, writing for years without sharing, not knowing who would say what, would my poetic verses be accepted or not. I started circulating some pieces within my circle, only choosing those who were close to me like stew in a small crock pot. Simmering started happening, finally feeling fire underneath my creative feet, diving in more, adding more flavor, everything coming together like a pot of fresh garlic, pepper, and oregano. Poetic verses were now overflowing, like that good pot of stew where aroma escapes, smelling good, bubbling over, exploding lyrically, spreading my writing from place to place, pouring out like tons of seasonings over your favorite meal, getting accepted into anthologies, invited to open mics and even featured. My confidence began boiling, steam seeping out of the pen to paper, my fingers to my laptop, spirit yelling internally to keep going. Now I'm publishing. I can help people heal through my poetry, pay it forward, teaching skills to others so they can bless, assisting the masses with their creativity, branched out and writing in various genres. My creative palette wanting to explore, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, and children's stories. Opportunities are endless, choosing to not box in my writing, gifted to pen creations, continually blessing others globally, boundless in all that is downloaded in me poetically, from now until God calls me home. I am poetry. All right. All right. I'm going to give myself some snaps. Okay. And that is from my book, Artist Paradise, Piece of Life, Volume 3. Okay. Your copy will not have the not for resale going across. Okay. But that is my time for today. That is how to do a triptych. I will come back and we'll work on this particular poem a bit more. We'll do the bottom part together. And I challenge you to try to write a triptych, okay? So if you'd like to follow me on my social media platforms, I am Divine Wright, DivineWryte. Don't forget that Y. I also have a website, serenawills.com, SerenaWills.com. And that is my time for today. Go ahead and try out a triptych. I know you can do it. Watch this segment again and looking forward to hearing from someone or a few of y'all if you try it out. Let me know. All right. Take good care and bye for now, everyone. Peace out.